So we realized recently that though many of us have been in worship for years and years and years, we don't always talk about what it is we're doing here. And some of us have a pretty good understanding of what we think we might be doing, but others, maybe it's worth talking about a little bit. And one of the pieces that we have incorporated into our worship since our virtual days is this time where we center ourselves, right? We started with a candle on screen when we were all worshiping via Zoom. And now we've come into this time where we just do some sacred rests at the beginning of worship. And I think that speaking about that part of what we do and just the whole idea of worship fit together well. And so this morning, I just want to invite us to consider what we're doing here. And I think the first thing to think about when we consider this is actually to let go of having an objective or a goal that's too specific. The fruits of worship don't always come during the worship itself. The same thing as when we do breath work. It's not always in the moment that we're doing it that the big fruits come. It comes in the fruits of our daily life and the shifts in our relationship with God that arrive along the way when we have these regular practice intervals, right? It's like when you use a muscle. When you're in the gym using the muscle, you're doing a lot of work, but that's not actually what's growing the muscle. It's the time of healing that comes afterwards. And then when you revisit that muscle, it turns out, oh, I'm stronger, I'm a little more limber. So it's the same thing is true for worship. So we need not enter worship or center in prayer with an objective in mind, like attaining some special state. If you get a little distracted, it's okay. If you nod off during the sermon, no harm, no foul, right? But it's having been here in this sort of state of seeking that helps us over time to deepen our experience across all of our lives, the presence of God. So keeping that in mind, we're going to enter into our time of prayer again this morning. And I'd like to invite you to do it a little differently than we normally do. We're going to look at this more like a centering prayer experience. So I'm going to invite you to think of a word in which to ground your prayer. And this can be a word you can take through the rest of the week, right? So it might be peace, home, joy, forgiveness, love, light, even just God, Spirit. Choose a word, and we're going to use that word to draw us ourselves into prayer. Okay, so the word becomes like a compass. You just keep returning to it. So when your mind wanders, that's cool. We expect it to wander. If you get sleepy, that's okay. It's sacred rest. When you awaken again, just keep going. So sit comfortably. Soften your gaze or close your eyes if you're comfortable. And take a deep, slow breath, breathing in your word, whatever it is. Hold it. And breathe it out into the world. Again, you breathe in your word. Imagine it infusing every part of you and then exhaling that as a prayer into the world. Now continue on at your own pace. Just quietly imagining that word coming into you, filling you, and then exhaling it as a prayer for the world. Now I invite, it's not in your bulletin, we have a few surprises in the bulletin today, but we have a children's sermon this morning, and we have a special guest who will be offering us our children's sermon, and Stu's going to introduce him and the story.
So I'd like to invite our children forward and professional grandfather, Peter.
That's me.
Come on up, everybody. Look, we got lots of kids today. So Peter says he doesn't need a microphone because he's very loud. He's a loud grandpa.
Constantly too loud. Too loud grandpa. So we have this wonderful book today that we're going to discuss, but it talks about what are called dichotomies, things that have opposites to them, like good has bad and happiness has sadness. And what's really interesting when you think about that process of goods and bad, it kind of establishes what we believe in and what is real around us. If we're happy all the time, then we don't know anything about sadness. But if we're sad, then we can appreciate happiness. You kind of get that? I mean, like if you're always full all the time and you're never hungry, you don't know what hungry is. But if you get really hungry sometimes, you can really appreciate getting that sandwich. And that's what this book is a little bit about. It talks about darkness, blackness, and night, and its opposite, which is lightness, whiteness, and day. Two things that are entirely different, but there's a little bit not quite, they're a bit deficient describing them just as darkness and lightness. But let's name the beauty of it. The goodness, the holiness, the darkness, the blackness, and the night. And there's happiness and sacredness in that. In fact, there's a lovely song that talks about the dark, sacred night. Someday you'll hear that song and it'll make sense to you. But anyway, so God uses darkness and blackness and night to show love for the world. How's that? Well, creation began in darkness. There was dark and void over the world. It opens up in the Bible kind of. So in the beginning, darkness covered the face of the deep. Everything was dark. There was no light. There's no reference to anything else. It was just dark. God poured out love and brought all things into being. The creation is God's work done in holy darkness. So it was done in complete darkness. Nothing there at all. And then, as an example, all throughout the Bible, there are references to darkness bringing in light. As an example, Abraham began to doubt God's promise. Now, in that story, God took a walk with Abraham and pointed to the night sky. And he basically said, look towards the heavens and count the stars. If you were able to count them, so shall your descendants be. That darkness, those lights, those pinpoints of lights, described to him how many heirs, how many children, grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren would come to be because of his love of God. Later, Jacob wrestled all night with God. Actually, he wrestled with an angel. And he wrestled with him because he had doubts and the rest and this challenge between God and between Abraham, or between Jacob, brought the many nations of the Lord together because he was wiser after that process. He was able to see something in himself in that darkness, that dark moment with God. So the work of God, darkness, is something beautiful. Even in the story of the Passover, at night in Egypt, God passed over the houses and protected all the firstborn children of Israel. Again, we have in Samuel, who was, I heard a voice calling to me. Samuel was working with a guy called Elijah. And Samuel would lay in bed and he would hear this voice calling to him in darkness. And that voice that was calling to him was God. He became a mighty, mighty prophet. So when the temple of King Solomon, great God, very wise, something about cutting people in half. You'll read all about it. It's amazing. This guy really was quite an amazing leader. And the Lord said that he would dwell in the thickness of darkness. The thickness of darkness. What a great word to describe darkness. Thickness, something that's tangible that you can actually feel. The Spirit of God dwells in holy darkness where we are invited to be held in God's name. The angels appeared in the shepherd. We all know this one. This is the Christmas story. The angels appeared in the shepherd in the dark and told them of a baby in a manger, again in darkness, brought by the angel's light. The disciples gathered with Jesus for the Holy Supper, and that too was done as the day turned to night. And again, we have this constant theme throughout the Bible and throughout our religion about how darkness plays such a key role in our belief system. When Jesus died on the cross, the day went black from noon to 3. It literally, the sky went black. So here we have a great sadness, an incredible sadness, the loss of Christ, and the sky went black. Creation began in holy darkness, and our new lives as free people in Christ began in the darkness of the sky at this day. God saved all creation, and it was the work of God's beauty, good, and holy darkness. So we know that even in our existence and how we survive on this planet has to do with darkness. Think about it. The rich black soil brings forth abundant life. One seed can yield thousands of seeds. And it said, unless a grain of wheat falls onto the earth and dies, it remains just a single grain. But if it dies in the rich, dark earth, it'll grow and germinate and turn into a plant and feed us. That's just magic when you think about it. The deep dark of the ocean holds more life than has ever been discovered on Earth. If you go down 1,000 meters, there's literally no life at all. Yet the abundance of life at that level is mind-boggling. It's awful. The amount of creatures and life that are down there are amazing, and they live in total darkness. Do you know how they get around in total darkness? Bioluminescence. They actually create their own light. They actually create their own light. There's a fish called an anglerfish that walks around and literally has a flashlight that hangs out of its head and swims around with the light. It's pretty amazing. We are reminded of the size of God's creation through the boundless beauty of blackness, outer space. Think about it. When we look at the sky, we see the blackness, but in the beginning, there were no stars. It was just total blackness. So if we go back 13 billion years, suddenly something happened at a single point in time, and we became. From that, you guys are 13 billion years old. You thought I was old. From the beginning of creation to the stars and the night sky, we are shown God's love. In houses of worship, the dark space of wonder, we are held in God's love. In the dark soil and the deep sea, we are reminded of God's love. From the promise of peace made to the shepherds at night, to the promise Jesus made on the cross, these are the beautiful works of God's holy darkness. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And we will head down to church school now. Thanks so much, Peter.
Later, guys.
Well, as I said, there are a few changes in our bulletin order of worship this morning, and another one is that we're not going to read the scripture that's in the bulletin. The lectionary gives us 4 choices each week, and I'm actually going to preach on the gospel.
Are we going to sing the hymn?
Oh, the hymn. You want to sing the hymn? Thanks, Lydia. Let's sing the hymn. Then we'll have the scripture.
It's perfect.
No. I'm back. Thank you, Olivia. Okay, well, this idea of centering, finding our quiet center, is something I'd like to draw out of this scripture we're going to read this morning. Originally, the passage that we have in the bulletin is a passage from the Old Testament where Moses and the people of Israel are having a pretty grumpy day. And they're in the wilderness and people are complaining, they don't have enough to eat, they don't have enough to drink, blah, blah, blah. They just come out of slavery, but they're still very happy. And Moses is saying, how long do I govern these people? And now in this passage, which is what we're going to reflect on, Jesus is wandering from one place to another. And he arrives and engages a conversation with someone. And then there's another conversation that follows with some other someone. And I invite you to listen for the places where people are trying to, risking, pulling one another off center, right? Where people are distracting one another and where folks are managing not to get distracted from the core. So here's our passage. So Jesus came to a Samaritan city called Sychar. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired by his journey, was sitting by the well. It was about noon. A Samaritan woman came to draw water. And Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." His disciples had gone to the city to buy food, which is in there as a sidebar because why would his disciples be drawing water? Would be the question that contemporaries have been asking. So the Samaritan woman, the only one there, said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask a drink of me, a Samaritan woman?" Sidebar in the scripture, Jews do not share things in common with Samaritans. Jesus answered her, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that is saying to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. The woman said to him, sir, you have no bucket, so the well is deep. Where do you get the living water? Are you greater than our ancestor Jacob? Sidebar, nobody is greater than their ancestor Jacob, who gave us this well, and with his sons and his flocks drank from it? Jesus said to her, everyone who drinks of this well will be thirsty again. But those who drink of the water that I will give them will never be thirsty. The water that I will give will become in them a spring of water, gushing up to eternal life. The woman said to him, sir, give me this water, so that I may never be thirsty or have to keep coming here to draw water. Jesus said to her, go, call your husband and come on back. Sidebar. He's acknowledging that as a rabbi, he should not be speaking to this woman alone, and also maybe this woman has some stories to tell. The woman answered him, I have no husband. Jesus said to her, you're right in saying I have no husband, for you have 5 husbands. And the one you have now is not your own husband. So what you said is true. The woman said to him, sir, I see that you're a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain. But you say that the place where people must worship is Jerusalem. Jesus said to her, woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you will worship God, neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know. For salvation is here from the Jews. But the hour is coming and is now here when true worshipers will worship God in spirit and in truth. For God seeks such as these to worship. God is spirit, and those who worship God must worship in spirit and truth. The woman said to him, I know that a Messiah is coming, who's called Christ. When he comes, he will proclaim things to us. Sidebar. This feels an awful lot like a Messiah proclaiming something to me. Is that what's happening here? Jesus said to her, I am he, the one who is speaking to you. Just then, the disciples came. They were astonished to see that Jesus was speaking with a woman. But no one said, what do you want? Or why are you speaking with a woman? Then the woman left her water jar. And she went back to the city. She said to all the people, come and see a man who has told me everything I've ever done. He can't be the Messiah, can he? They left the city, and they were on their way to see him. Meanwhile, the disciples were urging him, Rabbi, eat something, eat, Rabbi, eat. But he said to them, I have food to eat that you do not know about. So the disciples said to one another, surely no one's brought him something to eat. Jesus said to them, my food My food is to do the will of the one who sent me and to complete that work. May the Spirit here, may the church here, may the Spirit is saying to us. Amen. This thing about centering, this thing about coming here to church, it's something that has been a question in the human experience from go. Maybe it's a question in all of life's experience. This seeking to connect to something that is greater, to be filled in a way that we don't have to keep seeking, keep coming to the well over and over, but that we can know. We can know, like when we feel the sunlight on our faces is comfort. We can know, like when we inhale air, we're going to live with other men. We come seeking, wanting to know who we are and whose we are in our bones, in a way we can know and trust that bubbles up from us forever without needing to be replenished. We've been seeking this since at least these stories were born, and it looks like a lot sooner when you look back through the ages and archaeologies of humanity. We are all seeking a connection to God. And I would say even those who say they're not seeking a connection to God are still seeking to understand what it is we are, why we're here. For me, that's part of the God question too. I'm not sure that we need to have Jesus per se. Stay with me. I'm not sure we do, even in the church, all the time, have to have Jesus at the center. Because I think what Jesus is trying to do in this story, and in all the stories we have of him, is to shake us off looking outside of ourselves to looking for that quiet center. Jesus is endlessly pointing that we already have what we need inside us. It's just this opening that we seek to connect with what's already there. You go to this well every day to draw water. But what I can give you, what's opened in me and in those who I'm teaching, who are following me, is the ability to let that bucket go down deep into ourselves and find the everlasting life that was always there. Learning to go into our centers connects us to a wisdom, to a transformative healing, to a wholeness that our tradition in Christianity and the church tells us the structure helps us to bring in sometimes to that. But the structures of the church, whether it be our sanctuaries and our steeples or our diaconate and clergy, sometimes also get in the way because they make us look outside ourselves. Where can I go to draw this water? Instead of coming inside ourselves. To the quiet center, to the still small voice that has always been whispering. In the same way that you've always heard your heartbeat, but you sometimes forget until someone points it out to you again, right? It's always there. And the comfort of resting your head on the loved one's chest or your child's head on yours, when you hear that heartbeat, right? In someone you love, that comfort of knowing, right, they're alive. They're here with me. That comfort is transformative. And that heartbeat of life, that still small voice of God is in us right now, every day. The process is just teaching ourselves to open so that we ourselves can find it and hear it and draw on it. And then the whole project shifts. From where do I go to find this to, ooh, now that I've had this experience, how do I deepen it? How do I sit with others who have deepened it? And then, I need to call the people in my life who are hurting into this experience because I feel like now there's something I really can offer them that will help to bring them the healing and the wholeness that they seek. That's what Jesus is doing over and over, right? And where does he go? He goes to people who are on the outskirts, on the fringes. This woman, this Samaritan woman, right? Samaritans, not cool with the Jews, unclean. Woman, not cool with the men, unclean, right? A Samaritan woman who is at the well at noon when nobody else is there. There is a story why she's not hanging with the rest of her community, unclean. Maybe it has to do with the 5 husbands? No. But that's where Jesus goes. Why? Why does Jesus go to those people? It's not just to like hold up a sign for justice, y'all go be good to the other people. It's because when you're on the fringes, and you all have this experience, some have had it more often and more deeply, but we've all had it. When you are on the fringes, you begin to be open. You begin to seek comfort differently, right? You begin to seek connection differently. When you're being wheeled in for your surgery, even you or me, who's not a hand holder or a hugger, right? You might reach out to your orderly or whoever and take that hand and not just take it, but feel the comfort of a human embrace because you're seeking it differently. When your child is late coming home at night, right? Sometimes when your child is around you and going, mom, mom, or dad, 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 you just ignore them. You don't even hear them. You want them to go away. But when you're seeking them because you're afraid that they're missing, when you get that phone call and you hear their voice and you find out they're okay and they're alive, the feeling you have because you were seeking it. We come to church because we are seeking. But the question is, how open do we make ourselves when we come in order to receive what's already here? This woman, this Samaritan at the well, she came to church that day. She didn't know she was coming. She didn't come to a building. She didn't come to a structure, community culture, the diaconate, the pastorate. She came because she was thirsty and she was outside of society. She didn't have her own husband. She didn't have her own family. She didn't. Who knows what she didn't have? And Jesus saw her because he was looking for people like that. The lepers, the widows, the people who know they are alone. Those are the places where it's easier for us to open our hearts to what we're really seeking and not to be distracted. You see how many distractions there are in the story? The disciples want Jesus to eat. She's like, are you kidding me? I just connected with this woman's soul. I don't need food right now. This is what I'm here for. This is what's feeding me. Jesus is trying to offer water to the woman and she distractedly does buckets. We are surrounded by distractions, and even here when we come to church, we sometimes are distracted in the midst of it. Like, do I have my mission moment right? Is the bulletin here on time? Do we have the thing? Like, we have all these things we're doing. And they can become, rather than entry points, they can become distractions. Why are we here? We're here to come and orient ourselves toward an opening through which we can begin to experience, through those around us experiencing it, through ourselves experiencing it, that still small voice speaking in our hearts, that water of life welling up in our souls. That's what we're here for. And so we get distracted. It's okay, we keep going. The distractions are here in the story. It's okay, they keep going. We're not going to get it every time. It's okay. We keep going. Sometimes something's going to be illuminated here. Something's going to catch fire. Sometimes we're just going to be here. But somehow in the practice of coming over and over, the practice of praying over and over, the practice of listening, the practice of singing, right? Over and over. When you sing that song, it courses through you over and over. That's the magic Linda discovered, that she keeps us, and Bill keeps us in over and over, this choir. Our congregation is almost entirely choir, not an accident, right? Because there's something that when we come into that place, it opens. And you might not have words for it, but we can tell something shifted. And that's real. Take it seriously. That is coming to the well of the water that bubbles up and will never run dry. But you have to believe it. Whenever a healing occurs, Jesus says, what? Your faith has healed you. You have to come open, looking, seeking that voice, seeking it like it's the next breath you need to take. And being honest with yourself that that's where you are. That's why Jesus says, go to the folks who are on the fringes. Why? Because they are alive in the midst of what's real. There are not as many distractions. When you're like, where is my next meal coming from? You are looking for that meal without distraction, right? When you're wondering whether there's going to be a roof over your head tonight, you are looking for that roof without distraction. You are looking for human connection with somebody else. And that human connection is God. Empathy is God. When we experience it undistracted, we are feeling the experience of God. That's it. It's that simple. It's not high and mighty. It's not big and giant. It is so simple that you've been experiencing it all along, but these structures have told us it should be something more complicated with rules involved, right? It's just not. When you turn to the person in line behind you and say, you know what, I got your coffee, it's a small thing. But when you feel that feeling of connection, it makes tears well up in your eyes of gratitude because you've been able to offer a kindness to somebody, that, my friend, is you experiencing God. Build on those experiences. Let the tap open and just drop, 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 a little at a time. It grows. And then look for the next opportunity because you're going to start manifesting. And maybe big giant things won't come. Maybe you won't suddenly realize how to, I don't know, introduce affordable housing to all of Madison. Maybe you won't figure out how to heal racism, but you might. You might. You might start connecting to other people who also have the process driven. Little by little, you might together start to open something because you'll start to find each other and you'll draw more things. The women's retreat yesterday, we heard several stories about people being like snookered into involvement here, you know? And part of it is, yeah, we want the church to grow, we're proud of the church, we want to grow, right? Okay, but that's not really what it is at its core. It's this feeling of, I have found a healing, loving connection, and I want you to have the same experience, so I am drawing you into the midst of it with this invitation. Why don't you come? Why don't you come sing in the choir, right? Why don't you come be a deacon? Why don't you come be part of something? Because I want you to feel this healing, this connection, this whisper, this still small voice, this thing that I sometimes feel here among this community of people. I want you to have that too. And then maybe something will come alive in you that'll help all of us keep the healing going. Right? We go to Columbus House to make meals to nourish souls, not just the people who live at Columbus House, but our own, because we connect with what's deeply within us, the God stuff, right? That well of water, never ending, wisdoms, like our heartbeats, from the beginning of the human spirit. God has not left us alone. Jesus is not the only one who found the way. He just wasn't, but he's a good one to follow. And know that he's looking for you, especially when you're hurting. And you go to the well, God is there, looking for you. Open your heart and listen. Thanks, you. Your presence here is already an offering. So we invite your joys and your concerns, your tithes, your offerings, the plates will pass, and invite our choir to make another offering. And listen closely to the choir's words as they sing.
This is a special time during our service when we speak aloud the prayer requests from those among us. Start with the joys. Please enjoy the art show today. It's the last day. A big thank you to Harry Green and Laura Price for this show. Thank you, retreat organizers. My soul is full today and I can't wait to do it again. Never see. What a wonderful pajama party. Good friends. Good friends. Sure to be. Thank you to Lindia for half hospitality at the Old Lyme Homestead for our women's retreat yesterday. And to Pastor Heather and Deacon Melissa for excellent planning, deep guided meditations, and heartfelt sharing in creative activity circles. Love to all our wonderful women. Amen. To all the wonderful women that attended and celebrated a weekend overflowing with love and understanding, here's to Retreat 2.0. Oh, surprise, another one. It was a joy to gather with 20 women of all ages from a wonderful retreat at the Pathways. Many thanks to Lydia, Melissa, and Pastor Heather for all they did to make it. And here's sort of a joy and sort of concern. For those who will gather for the Scarlet Lewis Choose Love event next week, and for all those living in the aftermath of gun violence. Another concern, I ask prayers for my granddaughter-in-law who will be induced tomorrow, and for daughter whose interim name is Pumpkin. And I have a personal concern. For those of you that have pets, know how hard it is to say goodbye. Our beloved bulldog Axel passed away on Thursday night, so our family has been hurting a lot. So just in your prayers. So thank you. Now join us for a minute of silent prayer as we lift up the joys and concerns that were shared this morning, as well as those that are unspoken.
As we continue in prayer, in keeping with the theme or the feeling of retreat, I'm going to lead us on a guided visualization. So I invite you to see yourself, eyes closed, eyes relaxed. Imagine yourself standing by a well. Jacob's well, where the Samaritan woman once stood. Have a look at the well. What does it look like? When you touch it, what is the feel of its stillness under your hand? As you look around, you notice what's beneath your feet. Is it grass or cobbles, sand? Feel the air. And smell the musty well water as it travels up on the breeze from the depths of the well. As you stand there, you hear footsteps and you turn to see Jesus. Jesus is coming toward you. As he arrives, you greet one another and you sit down together. Jesus looks at you with great love. Take it in. Receive that love. Notice his eyes. What color are they? See them glistening in the sun. His eyelashes. And as you look at him in the eyes, he looks back and then begins to bless you. He places his hands on your head. Feel the weight of them. And he says to you, receive the gifts of the moment. And then he takes his hands and places them gently cupping your ears. You hear his voice, strong and tender, receive the gift of listening clearly and deeply with love. Jesus next, gently touching your eyes. And you hear his voice again, receive the gift of seeing clearly with compassion. Then he lays a finger gently on your mouth and says, receive the gift of speaking kindly and justly. He looks more deeply into your eyes again now and gently places his hand over your heart. He says your name, and then he says, receive the gifts of compassion and forgiveness. You are forgiven. Receive the gift of forgiving. And then he bends down and he places his hand on your feet. And he says, don't flinch. Receive the gift of being deeply, deeply rooted. Feel the depths of your rootedness. And also receive the gift of going toward those in need. Know I got you as you go. Then straightening up, Jesus sits up and he holds out his hands for your hands. And you place your hands in his, you can feel the warmth of them. And as he holds your hands, he looks in your eyes again and he says, these hands, your hands, are made both forgiving and receiving. He lifts your hands gently to his lips and he kisses them. And he looks into your eyes and he says, receive these gifts. They are for you. And give. Take a moment. Thank Jesus for his presence with you and for his gifts. Take him in one more time in your eyes. And now say goodbye. As he begins to take his leave of you, you may quietly now return to this time and this place. Between your breathing, bring those gifts with you, gifts of peace. And as you open your eyes, come back to this place, I invite you to join praying in prayer, Jesus Christ. Hearing his voice, you heard in your own heart. And forgive us. It is not speech. Not is the kingdom.
We'll go through all of them, but I'll highlight a few. The Palm Sunday play, the rehearsal is today after worship.
Downstairs.
Downstairs, okay. See, Reverend Olivia. This week, just about the Scarlet Lewis event on March 15th, which is free. We just asked that you register, things so we get an idea of numbers. So if they've got it online or you can call the office. I'll go with that. And a reminder about care packages for college seniors. And please look, get to the student's college address on the March 9th. I think that's the main one, read for that, best.
Well, then, my friends, as we go out into this week, we continue to live and love, to seek and serve, and y'all remember the life is good. We don't get much time to gladden the hearts of those who make this journey with us, so be swift to love. Make haste, be kind. May God who made us and who loves us and who makes us good with us, be with us all now and forever. Amen.
Amen.
And shalom. Amen. Our worship is ended, so.